Alligator Alcatraz, the Trump administration's Everglades-based immigration detention center, is off to a rocky start. Just 2 weeks after President Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis heralded its opening, detainees and staff are reporting disturbing challenges at the facility, including swarms of mosquitoes, limited water, and backed-up portable toilets. The Washington Post reports, quote, "Without permanent structures, electricity, or running water, drinking and bathing water has to be brought in several times a day, but is still in short supply, and rainwater leaks into the tents that protect detainees' chain-link cells." The New York Times also spoke with several detainees who say they lack access to information, recreation, and medication, and experience infrequent showers, insufficient meals, sleep deprivation, and illness.
So far, independent inspections of the camp have not been permitted, but state officials deny the claims of poor conditions at the camp. In an email to the Post, a spokesperson for the Florida Division of Emergency Management wrote, "The plumbing and sewage claims are false. The facility is in good working order, and detainees have access to drinking water, showers, and clean facilities for hygiene." Governor DeSantis is reportedly considering opening another facility in North Florida, and at least 5 other states are considering using Alligator Alcatraz as a model for their own detention centers.
So I think you've something to say on this one, Amber. This was an Amber Duke suggestion.
It
and
was.
I felt it was slightly off-brand for you to be suggesting a segment on the horrendous conditions that detainees face. So
well,
what's your view?
Okay, so if we take the worst of the accusations, which is that toilets are backing up, they don't have showers every day, maybe they don't have toothbrushes, and there's some water coming in from the tents. I think these are not the sort of inhumane conditions that the detainees have alleged to the Washington Post. And also, when I'm seeing reactions to this from people who are generally supportive of Trump's immigration policy, they say, well, it's not going to be the Ritz-Carlton, right? This is a detention facility. This isn't anything unusual for something that was built relatively quickly. The people who work there say that they have been making aims to make sure that those tents are sealed at the bottom so that the water doesn't come in. But one of the things that really struck me in the Washington Post story, reading through it, that made me actually doubt some of the more aggressive claims, was that there were complaints that the detainees were fed cold ham sandwiches. And I thought, really, you're complaining about having to eat a cold ham sandwich? I have that every day for lunch.
Would the suggestion be that some of them were Muslim, though? Or that it was the ham rather than the coldness that was the problem?
According to the Washington Post reporting, the detainees and former guards described, quote, grim conditions, and then immediately cited a cold ham sandwich. And there was no claim of any religious objections to that.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that one of the dispiriting things about the discussion about Alligator Alcatraz was, I'm sure you saw there was a congressional delegation who inspected it recently. And after they emerged, you had members of each party describing what sounded like a completely different facility. So I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz was one of the Democrats, and she was talking about how horrendous it was. I don't recall exactly who the Republican I heard saying, no, it's all fine. It's a perfectly normal detention facility. I am skeptical about the conditions because it seems to me that part of the reason for the name Alligator Alcatraz and for some of the comments we heard from President Trump at the start of its operation was all about sort of gratuitously, to my mind, putting in the harshest conditions possible and almost making a joke of, well, people can't escape here because they'd be chased by alligators. You and I maybe discussed this, in fact, before. But the other point that I think is, to my mind, more important than exactly the conditions, because there's dispute about the conditions, is that the Miami Herald did a very good report into who is being held at this facility. And at the time, there were more than 700 detainees. And the Herald noted that, far be it from the claims that these were, as Trump put it, the most vicious people on the planet, about a third of those people had no other criminal record or criminal charges. They had violated immigration law. And so this propensity to justify conditions or justify a camp with this kind of gratuitously gloating name is that it's for the absolute dregs of humanity. And it's not, seemingly. It's, in a good number of cases, simply about people who committed infringements of immigration law.
Not necessarily, though, because it could be the case that some of these people have gang affiliations, which wouldn't necessarily lead to criminal charges or convictions. But that being said, I think reading the descriptions and then comparing it to past descriptions of detention facilities, both through DHS and HHS, during both the first Trump administration as well as the Biden administration, it all sounded pretty consistent with the conditions that occur at these facilities regardless. It's obviously a challenge to have that many people who are sort of transient, right? They're on the way out of deportation orders. It just seemed like it wasn't anything abnormal in terms of how these facilities are operating. That's not to say that they shouldn't have access to regular drinking water or things like that, which of course is under dispute by the guards that are there as well as the people who are staying there. But it didn't seem gratuitous or beyond what we would normally come to expect from a detention facility. And the Democrats who visited did admit that they saw a lot of the immigrants wearing wristbands, which had different colors to denote what kind of crimes they had committed. And they recalled seeing a lot of red wristbands, which apparently means violent criminal. So I would be curious to know what the group of people who do not fall into that criminal charges or criminal convictions, what they had been accused of outside of just breaking the law in terms of coming into the country illegally. Because like I said, it is possible that they had gang affiliations. But the beautiful thing about these detention facilities and Trump's immigration policy is that you can avoid going there. All you have to do is self-deport. And not only do you get to have the opportunity to then apply for legal status in the U.S. later on, but you get a $1,000 check on your way out.
I have to, I think, pick up on the gang affiliations point, because you just seem to be, with all due respect, asserting that out of thin air.
Well, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's a certainty, but I'm saying it's a possibility that the Miami Herald might not have considered when they were merely looking at criminal records.
Right, but I mean, if you are saying, as Trump did, that it's the most vicious people on Earth or on the planet or something, it behoves you to provide some proof as to why that is the case. Now, this idea of gang affiliations is particularly on my mind because there was reporting this week on the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And it noted the questioning of a government representative about the evidence against him, which suddenly seemed much thinner than we had been led to believe. There was an informant who, on the fourth interview, allegedly talked about gang affiliations on his part, and the person interviewing him, the law enforcement or immigration enforcement person interviewing him, made no record of this at all on his notes of the interview, has suddenly decided that that was said. So that's why I'm skeptical a lot of the time about these arguments about gang affiliation. If people have proof, or even better, conviction of criminal wrongdoing, then obviously I think they should be deported. But we can't just cast allegations around out of nothing.
Well, the Abrego Garcia case, even beyond that point that you mentioned about the informant, had a lot more evidence. Maybe the government didn't present it during this particular hearing, but we do know, looking on past court documents, that Abrego Garcia's wife's brother had said that she was worried about leaving him because of his gang affiliation. He was picked up with several other ranking members of MS-13, including wearing clothing that denotes membership in the gang, such as the Chicago Bulls logo with the rolls of money on top of it, on the eyes and the mouth of that, which, I mean, that's inarguable to me that that is an MS-13 gang symbol.
So it's highly arguable to me that we want to arrest everyone with the Chicago Bulls tops on. Anyway.
With the rolls of money.
Well, the IDF has struck a Catholic church in Gaza, killing 3. We have the response to that from Pope Leo after the break. Don't go anywhere.